The fact that you're here, you're already on your way to becoming a part of it if this is what you want to do with your career. I'll say this up front. This is part of becoming one of us. One of the chiller guys is getting involved with chiller guys and asking these questions, having these conversations, and beginning to this learning process. You want to become a chiller technician, then get involved with chiller technicians. That's one of the fastest ways. I am 20. I have 1 year of experience in residential HVAC. How can I start learning about chillers? I'm looking to move up as fast as possible. I've heard you say that residential experience does not translate to chillers. Residential is a very different animal compared to what we do on the chiller side. And by chiller side, an even broader way of saying that is heavy commercial industrial side. Who we're working for, what we're working on, a lot of things are very different. So residential is operating at and this is not to put anybody down, okay, but it is operating at the most basic foundations of what our industry has to offer. Now, there are some residential systems today that have started to use some of our, say, more advanced technologies, such as variable speed, whether it be via drives, whether it be via ECM, or communicating systems and using a 2-wire or 4-wire data communication. These are things that let's just stay to the chiller side, we have used for decades. And residential is within their first decade, I would say, of this really becoming any form of normal. And even then, it's really not that broadly used, unless you're dealing with a mini split or something. So I'll give you that. Part of what I want to express with pointing that out is in residential, you are learning the core fundamentals and you're building a basic tool and knowledge base on how to operate as a technician in this industry. And like the fundamentals of refrigeration are all still there. And one of the things that I'll bridge a gap for is with chillers, what makes a chiller a chiller? The simple answer, it has a hydronic evaporator. Hydronic, it has water, or you'll hear the term brine. Brine being a glycol solution. Why do we have that? So that we can run colder leaving water temperatures out of our machines without freezing the water, because water freezes at 32. Sometimes we need to run at 30 or upper 20s in terms of temperature to achieve whatever process is happening, right? Those systems exist. So we have a brine solution, or maybe we just don't want it to freeze due to ambient conditions too. That also is true. That's what a chiller is. But we use water and water through a chill water coil the same way that we would use DX coils, right? Which is just a refrigerant-based coil. Refrigerant's flowing through the coil instead of water. I will point out, real technicality here, water is a refrigerant. Was it 718? The standard machine uses a 45-degree leaving water temperature, but most of your coils in a split system are going to be about 42, 45 degrees of refrigerant saturation. Those correlate for the same reasons. Dehumidification. Instead of air for CFM, replace that with water and GPM on our chiller's evaporator. So now if we run less water through our evaporator in the form of gallons per minute, let's say a strainer began to plug up. So instead of a air filter, we now have a water filter, a strainer, that begins to plug up and lowers our GPM. Well, we're going to see the exact same conditions. We're going to see saturation begin to drop. We're going to see the superheat also be affected. These are fundamental operations that happen in residential and in chillers, but we're using slightly different mediums. Mediums are call it fluid, okay, that is processing through our heat exchanger. The fluid in a split system is air, ambient air that we breathe. The fluid through a chiller's evaporator is liquid water. We're changing what is flowing through our evaporator, but the core fundamentals of what's happening on a refrigeration level aren't changing. Those things are staying the same. So there are plenty of things from a basics level that correlate. There's also lots of tools that correlate. We use the same service wrenches. Now, albeit there are larger ones, right? So you've got the 3/8, was it 5/16 quarter, standard service wrench, and we get into 1/2 inch and 3/4 service valves. Okay, so those would be some things that we just scale bigger because we have just our machines are running at larger tonnages. We're trying to maintain an entire facility where you may be just trying to maintain a single house. It's just a scale aspect at that point. So the tools scale up larger, but a lot of the same basic tools. We use the same Phillips screwdriver. We use the same 5/16 nut driver. Getting back to the scale of things, on the chiller side, we don't operate with flat rate pricing. If you're in residential, you're probably familiar with having your pricing books that you drive around with and a vehicle fully stocked with all your different components. You've got your standard condenser fan, your standard blower motor, your standard capacitors that you would need. You've got all this stock on your vehicle. And you're probably carrying more stock than you're carrying tools. Well, this is a difference when you get into the chiller side. For us, we typically carry more tools than we do stock. Why? Because not only the scale and how big things are, but also the variety is just far too broad. We're not dealing with single phase where we can take a standard, we can have just a handful of basic contactors on hand at all times. That's not true for us. We have starters the size of my head, which means aka large, and we may have 3 of those for one motor. You can't carry that in a truck stock. Like, these are things where we become different. We don't work off of flat rate pricing. It's just not possible. You can't create a flat rate book, in my opinion, doing chiller side work. That book would be so big, it just wouldn't be reasonable. We don't work off of commission, most of us. I have seen exceptions to this particular one, but most of us don't operate off of commissions the same way that you would in residential, where you get a commission, or a PIP would be another way of saying that, off of how much you can sell a particular customer. These are things that are different. Now, getting into learning chillers, one of the best ways, in my opinion, is exactly what I'm trying to do here. You're exactly who I'm trying to speak to right now. You're exactly why this live stream is happening. We need more people like yourself to get involved and try to grow into this side of the industry. We need people like yourself, and we need you to take this, have fun in the process, genuinely, but we also need you to take this seriously, because there's not enough of us doing this, and we're struggling, and we're overwhelmed, and we can't get enough people to help us. And this is a major problem. Many of us, we're working too many hours, recession or not, down economy or not. There's not enough of us to support this industry. Getting involved here on the channel and getting involved over at chilleracademy.com. I have an entire free course if you're interested in learning this. I have an entire free course for you to be able to go through and see what chiller life is like, and if that's something you would be interested in doing. It worked out perfect for me. This is my dream career. I love chillers and everything about them. They're just so freaking awesome. In terms of getting on with a company, there's a couple of paths to go with that. Being you're this early and you're this young, yeah, there's lots of companies who are looking for good apprentices, because that's not always the easiest thing to come across, who they can bring in and train. And if you can come in, see, as a previous operations manager myself, when I have an apprentice who can come in and just completely lay out so much already work they've put in, they fully understand a refrigeration cycle, they fully understand superheats, not only just suction, but discharge superheat. They can express some form of understanding of hydronics and the basics there. You don't have to be an expert, and don't try to pretend that you are in any of this stuff. Be upfront with the fact that you're learning, but here's what you've learned, right? And just walk in with, I've learned this. I can't tell you how much that would go a long way with the right company to recognize that you're willing to put the work in, that they're willing to invest in you. And that's a big problem that a lot of us have. It's a conversation I have with a lot of owners all the time. How do we get our apprentices to put the amount of work in that we're willing to invest in them? Why? Because we have to. If there's nobody else to hire, they're not there, they don't exist. So we've got to do something, and that means being far more intentional with bringing up younger technicians. But that also means that you've got to be willing to show that you are willing to put that work in. So if you can find a company that works on chillers and has a chiller team, make sure you verify that piece of it. Then do what you can to get on board with them. Even if that means take a pay cut, I promise you it's temporary. Take the pay cut. If you want to do this, get involved. Let them guide you and teach you. It won't take that long before whatever you thought you could make in residential would be a laughing joke to what you can do if you can put the time in to be successful on this side of the industry. If you can't, if there's not a company who's willing to do that, a next step would be finding a company that at minimum does heavy commercial and get involved in the commercial side. Get out of residential and into commercial in general. Start developing your commercial understanding, because the customers we deal with, the norms that we go through, there's just so many little things that you need to get up to speed on and learn in the process to interact with customers successfully at a minimum. It's not the same thing as dealing with a homeowner whatsoever. Not even light commercial, even though that is a step I took. I went residential, light commercial, heavy commercial, chillers. Okay, so I did go that path. But I would suggest to you, skip the light commercial part. Don't get caught up in the low temp refrigeration side of things. That it's a tough industry. If that's your thing, go for it, okay? But if you want chillers, if that is your goal, skip that. Find a company that's doing heavy commercial work, even if they don't have chillers, and begin to learn. You're in that environment, you're going to see all the control systems that we work on. You're going to see large circuit recoveries, charging. You're going to start working with cranes and a whole, there's so many little things that you will need when it comes time to trying to apply for that chiller role. And in the meantime, while you're working with that company that's doing the heavy commercial, learn chillers. Get involved at Chiller Academy. Get on these streams, ask your questions, get clarification, and learn this stuff in the process. So that once you get your feet under you, you can then approach a company that is working on chillers full time. And you can show them, hey, I've done this study. I've learned this. I've worked in heavy side on doing this. I need an opportunity. This is what I have done. This is what I know. Quiz me. Ask me questions. I don't have all the answers, but I think I have enough to be worth your time. Don't be arrogant, but stand on what you do understand. And if they correct you, so be it. Let them correct you. That is a conversation that can help guide you into a company to do what you want to do and to scale your career further into this industry.